Connecting and recording. All right, everyone. I am super excited to be sitting here with Sean McVay of King Buffalo. It's a first interview for my channel, tell you the truth, and something I've been wanting to break into for a long time. So appreciate you being here. Thank you very, very, very much. King Buffalo is a band that came on my radar last year when you guys were out touring with Clutch, and I caught you guys on Long Island in outside of New York, and it was just an amazing show, and I've been listening to you guys ever since. And today's a very special day because it's September 2nd, and it's the day that Regenerator has the third album in the, what we would call it, lockdown series. It has released on streaming. Sean, you're just back from a long European tour. You just played Burning Man, and you're just about to set off on a North American tour. Yep. So I must say that I don't even know where to start. I mean, Regenerator is right now. It's hitting the streaming. How do you feel about that?
Oh man, I'm super happy to finally get that out into the world. And it's been a while, since we finished it and we're able to actually get it released. So to have that done, it just certainly feel like a big sense of accomplishment. I'm really proud to be able to get it out. It's the whole idea, the whole 3-record idea. It took a ton of work, and it obviously didn't go 100% according to plan. So to finally get it released, it just feels really good.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, you sent out the vinyl kind of early for all the people who pre-ordered it, so it's been on people's earlobes for a while. Have you had good response so far, or what's the feeling?
The response has been really good. You never really know what to expect when you're releasing something. Are they going to like this? Because they've all kind of been pretty different the last few releases. But the response has been really good, very, very overwhelmingly positive. So it's been very flattering.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I mean, I've been spinning it a few times today on the streaming, and I mean, I heard the singles. The singles were really, really, really good, and the rest of the songs, especially Avalon and Firmament, are just they're gonna get a lot of spins this time around.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm in this stage right now where I'm getting off, having listened to the singles on repeat, and now I sort of have to integrate them into the album experience, which is always this funny mental exercise that you have to do when you have been overplaying one song for a while and you're getting into the rest of it.
It's funny too, because it's we obviously we're not a singles band, right? We don't really write singles. Everything we write takes place in the context of an album. So for me, I'm working on it in the macro, I'm always oh, this is where ours is going to sit. And so to me, as I'm writing everything and arranging everything, it's with that in mind of okay, it's going to go here. So I want it to do this. So always releasing them as singles is kind of strange. I always, it feels a little bit well, it's not really, you're getting half of it,
Oh.
So I always try to make everything to listen to sequentially in order. So I don't know. I guess that's just inside baseball talk here for a second.
Yeah, I guess so. But I think one thing for that is with King Buffalo versus certain other bands. Of course, I'm an album guy. I'm a prog guy. I'm an album guy. But with you, religiously, it's song number one until the final one every time, because it translates what you just said, that you have a plan for the sequencing, and it's not a song, it's an album experience. So
yeah. I mean, I grew up loving albums. It's funny. I'm the kind of guy who I can't really remember song names that I love, but I remember, it was track 5 on the record. Because I always was put the album on, put my headphones on, and listen through the whole thing. And I'm not sitting there reading the liner notes, remembering the song name. So that's just how I've always thought about music and how I've liked to listen to it. So having our output be focused on the full album has always been really important to me.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing because the way you write songs, there's certain phrases or vocabulary that sometimes repeats throughout one song, one way or another. Maybe that's just your style of playing, but all those like little senses of like callbacks or repetitions of one idea but in a new context is sort of like incredibly stimulating when I hear your music. And I think that's just like one of the things that like kind of really attracted me to your guys' music. So that's super duper cool. Are there any of the songs that you're like more excited to play live than others, or how is that all gonna go?
I don't know. I'm excited to play any of them, really, just to like add stuff to the set list. And I don't want to say one specific song and then not play that and then have to say, but you were excited to play that. But no, like I'm excited because as you've kind of probably noticed with the record, it's a little like faster. It's a little more like upbeat in a lot of ways. So I'm looking forward to be able to incorporate that a little bit more, that like sort of aesthetic a little more into our live set. We have a lot of stuff, we're kind of known as like kind of like a droney band, a lot of drone and like kind of like a very calm sort of wall of sound, experience. And so to be able to add a little more speed and a little more energy into the set, I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think Burden of Restlessness kind of felt like being inside somebody's head. Like, and like, somebody who had, I don't know what you call it, so almost like invasive thoughts, or at least some of the songs had that vibe, sort of like the desperation of being alone in your own head. And then, Acheron was more sort of, say, mystical and probably like, that sort of the title track of that album, especially like long, drony, drawn out, but like really pulls you into a different place while hearing it. And the way that I hear Regenerator right now is that it's like, let's open the door. It's outgoing. It is happy and uplifting. And then a song like Ours is like, it's a little bit frantic. So it's out of the head, but it's out back in the world and roaming around.
That's actually, it's kind of funny you said that. That was like very much kind of what I was going for, Burden being, in fully like inside the brain, and then Acheron sort of in a mystical soup, essentially. I don't know how else to describe it. And then Regenerator kind of being like you're actually like watching it in front of you, watching things in front of you, instead of like fully immersed in, like a ethereal gel, you're like watching things, you're watching I wanted the record to sort of sound and feel like watching a band, have like more of like a traditional, sort of, I don't know, I guess like vintagey rock band style vibe to it. But
oh yeah. And a few songs are definitely like that. Firmament is probably the longest and the most vampy of the songs in a way. I would say that's one that calls back. But I mean, that's uncharacteristic of you in other ways, in that it starts with a bone dry guitar sound.
It sure does. That was incredibly scary to do. But not as much the guitars, the vocal was like, oh my God. Like, when I was doing it, I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. It was very scary, and like, of course, it's still always a little bit weird and hard for me to hear my voice that way. But yeah, I think it was ultimately the right decision for the song.
Yeah. I mean, I can only say I think it's an incredibly good song, and it has those little complex notes that are just hitting the right way with the vocal melody against that bass line that you have moving and on the guitar strings and so on. And it's like, I think it hit home. At least it did for me. So that's pretty damn good. And just like, and Avalon was also like a love at first sight song for me, like, or first ear sight. I don't know if that's the word, but that's so cool. But I mean, going a little bit beyond just Regenerator for now, is there, because these three albums, you mentioned in another interview that they all sort of came out of a bunch of ideas of some jams that you did in early COVID, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When when COVID hit and everything kind of got, all the touring was basically shut down. We were still pretty lucky in our small city of Rochester. The COVID numbers were really low still. So we set up some plastic sheets around the drum set. And then, me and Dan were on opposite sides of the room and we had masks on and we're like, okay, well, let's just, we didn't know what else to do. We're like, well, we don't really have a space that we could do live streams because the building was too old and we couldn't get the internet bandwidth to be able to do a live stream. We're like, I don't know, I guess let's start jamming and see if anything comes of it. We jammed for a week or two and, since our practice space is also our studio, we record everything. And after a couple of weeks, I opened up the sessions and I started looking through and, we had 20 hours worth of jams there. And I messaged the guys immediately, we're done jamming. We can't add more to this and possibly be able to listen through and find anything. So I started the process of listening through 20 hours worth of jams and making notes of that was cool. That wasn't cool. That was cool. That wasn't cool. And then whittled it down to about 4 hours that we thought were cool. And then, okay, now what to do with this 4 hours of stuff? We start moving things around, trying to organize things into what we felt would be a complete album, a unique and fully fledged record. And we ended up with 3 that we felt were okay, these 3, these groupings make 3 records that we feel sound different enough and can tell a story. And then that's when we really started to zero in on the crafting them at that point.
Oh yeah. And at this point, what was it that was there that you had pulled out of those 4 hours? I find it hard to believe that we're talking full songs here, but was it more parts of songs or riffs or what? How was it all organized at this point?
Parts of songs and riffs, but so a lot of it is, I'm trying to think of an example. Regenerator was actually probably the one that was ended up on the record being the closest to its original form because it's essentially a 10-minute jam, right? So that was the hard part to recreate because when we did it, it was just a jam. We weren't thinking about it. It was just, okay, let's put it together. We just did it in the moment. And then, okay, how do we recreate that feeling and put that back into a record? So that one was probably the closest, but something let's see, trying to think through everything. Even so something like Firmament was originally probably 18 minutes, right? But a lot of that is just repeated phrase. You just jamming on something for a long time, repeating stuff, trying to establish a groove and all this stuff. Way too long and repetitive to release it that way. So you have to start cutting it down, cutting out parts, rearranging parts. That one was actually, it's actually funny. Firmament was actually the child of 2 completely different jams on completely different days that we sort of jammed together as I was listening through. Cause I found one that was oh, I really like the beginning of Firmament, the first, what is really the first 3 minutes, with the stuff with the vocals was a different song that we did on a different day. And then everything after that with the loud stuff was again from a different thing. I was oh, how can these 2 ideas are cool. How can we put them together? How can we get from A to B to C, have it make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're finding riffs, textures, sounds that feel good. And then starting to whittle stuff away because yeah, the jams kind of meander for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And that's just how you write and that's how you find the cool stuff. And then you can say, okay, we can get rid of that 5 minutes of filler. We don't need that there.
Sure. At that point, are there a few vocal melodies, a little bit of humming or just sparse set of words that went into those hours of music? Or did you come up with some of that afterwards? How does that work?
Most of it is after. It depends. Yeah. Cycle. I always have a microphone set up when we're jamming for my voice. And sometimes I'll get in there and I'll just like hum, or make up BS, and just like not even words, just like syllables, and just like have a rough idea. But honestly, for these 3 records, I didn't, because I was wearing a mask the whole time.
Oh.
So I didn't really do much of that. It was after we started to that was something I would think about while listening through, is like, okay, do I feel and does it inspire a melody, a vocal melody, while I'm listening through?
Yeah, then you could sit around and hum up as you were chopping up.
As I was listening through. And then if it was like, I don't know how I could possibly sing to this, then it kind of gets put onto the side and says, like, maybe we can come back to it. And that was, again, back to Firmament, of like pushing these 2 different jams together, was the first half of what is the second half of Firmament. So like the original jam, what we played before the second half of Firmament, I couldn't find a melody there. I couldn't figure one out. But we had this first half of a different jam that I was like, that is in the same key. And I felt, I was inspired to do that melody. It came to me and I was like, okay, like, how can we get these 2 together?
That's super cool. So, I mean, one thing for me, like, so I tend to be on the more, like, I come up with ideas, but when I have half a song, that's the most dangerous phase. How do you, so some of the ideas that came out of as half songs, how did you tackle that?
If it's that much of a half, then it maybe doesn't go too much farther than that, unless I can find something to pair it up, something else, another half of something else to pair it with. Going back actually a few records to Dead Star. So Ida Karine was actually, the first half was written as a jam. We wrote that together, and then we couldn't figure out what to really do with it. So I was listening through at home, and then that's when I was just kind of farting around on my guitar. And that's when I came up with the second half riff, the I was like, oh, how can we get, that I just came up with on my own later, and then we worked on it together and put it together. But yeah, if it's that much of a single half, and there's a lot of riffs that are just in the hard drive space and will never go anywhere, because it's nothing but one riff. Like, how do we make this a song?
So you don't find yourself like on a dark night, just like pulling out a single riff and sitting there and going like, I wonder what could come after, and then just like exhaustively trying all ideas.
I mean, it has happened. I try not to. One of the things, and it's a big challenge for me, is you want things to be kind of easy, as I find. Like, it's very easy for me to hyperfixate on something and then to work on it too hard. And I feel like if you're forcing it that much, then maybe it wasn't meant to be. So like, maybe save the riff, like put it in the folder, and like, whatever, maybe you have it at some point. If you ever want to go back, like, who knows, maybe in 2 years, you're like, maybe I'll listen through, and you find it and you're like, oh, I finally know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Or you don't. But if it's getting to be that big of a struggle that early on, then just move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And keep doing that. Find what you want.
Yeah. So it sounds like more like you work more from your gut than like a very cerebral process, if I understand correctly.
Yes and no. I'm going to use it's actually going to be kind of a funny analogy, but yeah. I love to fish, right? Like I love fishing. And so early on when you're fishing, it's very easy to say, like, find a spot that you think will be a good fishing spot. And you sit there and you fish and you fish and you fish, and you're not catching anything. Yeah. You're like, why am I not catching anything? This spot looks perfect. I can see all the things. I know there's fish here. There's no spots. I'm not catching any fish. This is the spot. But a few years ago, I decided, if you're not catching anything within 15 minutes, move to the next spot and just keep moving. And then as soon as you start doing that, you start catching fish and you're having fun, and it starts to be productive. And it's you can try to force whatever you want in one spot, but it doesn't mean it's going to work. Sometimes the fish just don't want to eat. And so you say, okay, yeah, I'm going to go find the ones that do want to. And that kind of goes, I don't know, I guess anything with life. Like if you're trying to force it that hard, then maybe it's just not meant to be. Move on to the next thing and try to, it'll be easier. You're not fighting against the stream as much then. Everything is going to start to work together a little easier.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for me personally, like I think my Achilles heel is that, I look up to really complex bands that have like incredibly long songs. And even those, one of my favorite bands is Opeth, if you know those guys, and they have.
I'm not like super familiar with the material. I've heard some of it, and they're incredible. Yeah,
yeah, and it's just kind of like they have this like really like they write all their stuff just kind of like, or they wrote some of the albums that I'm most impressed with, like in studio, just like going into the studios and having no idea what was going to come up, and then just sort of they were just on some kind of wave. So I think like for like. I don't get to release that much music, so because I tend to get all those really long, complex things stuck halfway through. And but the other day I was out traveling for a long while, and I came home and I sit down and I start playing something, and I just say, okay, that little phrase with a little twist on the end, that's it, and I'm gonna release it. And it was 2 minutes, but at least it was something. It was good. So it's kind of funny how that is. You move through different places and you go fishing. But what does going fishing look for you in terms of, say, a writing process? Is it something about maybe going, well, let's put on a new pedal or do a new tuning, or yeah?
For sure. Depending on how I'm feeling at that time. So like Dead Star, the whole record, I was feeling kind of like in a bit of a rut creatively. So I kind of messed around and was like, okay, I'm going to force myself to do this whole record with this different tuning.
Yeah.
And see what happens,
Yeah.
And the initial plan for Dead Star was just to have it be a 20-minute EP. And then it ended up becoming like a 37-minute thing, because you kind of start sparking like different creative buttons in your brain. Sometimes it's just add a new pedal. Sometimes, I got a new fuzz pedal. I'm going to use this fuzz pedal on this record. I have to do it,
Yeah.
Kind of set little rules for yourself. Or I'm not going to use any reverb,
Oh yeah.
things like that. Just whatever, like a little rule for yourself can sometimes go a long way to push you out of maybe your comfort zone.
Yeah. I also find that like I write better anywhere except for in my studio. So where, I have written more songs sitting on a hacienda in Brazil, or right after I came home from a journey, or at my mom's place when I brought a guitar for a weekend, than I have in my own little home studio here. It's kind of funny how that is.
Yeah, I mean, some people certainly work that way. It's hard trying to turn creativity on. That's what makes like the big time pros like so incredible, when they're like, okay, I'm going to the studio and I'm doing it today. But again, I think a lot of that is learning when to move on from an idea. And just kind of following it, like you were talking about. I don't know much about Opeth's workflow, but I would assume that they have a lot of stuff that they created in the moment that they're just like, someone's like, it's not really vibing, and then they cut it and they move on to the next thing. And then they end up putting out what is an opus.
That makes sense. Yeah, I know. But for you guys, so I was wondering, with these 3 albums that were coming out now, like are there any songs that were not done in this way? Are there any songs where, say, you sat at home and wrote a demo with MIDI drums and then took it in, or?
Yes, actually. Interlude I wrote at home by myself. I bounced some lyrics ideas. Scott helped with the lyrics, but the rest of it, I kind of like arranged everything. Mammoth actually started that way. Started as like a meme playing around at home in GarageBand. And then I thought it was kind of cool, and I showed it to the guys, and then they're like, okay, let's work on it. And then I took it home again, and I was like, let's, tweak the drum rhythm pattern and then all this stuff. And then that one actually started more at home in my little studio than the others.
That would also be my guess, because it's a song that definitely, it feels more composed somehow. Like, so that kind of makes sense. What does repetition mean to you
What does it mean to
in
me?
songwriting?
I think it's super important. I'm a big, I mean, obviously anyone who's listened to King Buffalo, I think like it serves a lot of purposes, but I think the main one is setting up expectations and then tension and surprises, right? So, if you repeat any sort of pattern repeatedly, it starts to become almost like a droning loop, no matter if it's a little 3-note thing, it starts to become one sort of texture as it's repeated enough. And then when you change it in some way, that can either that can be a big change. It can trigger something in the brain that is like, oh wow, that's slightly different, even if it's just like a tiny little thing, if it's just a rhythmic thing, or you throw on a different effect or whatever. I think like, I guess I'm not enough of like a brain scientist to know enough of this, but I think like, humans we kind of seek patterns, right? Like, whether it's, behavioral patterns or, colors, whatever, like our brains, like that's part of how we develop, right? We pick out patterns and we do it. And I think like with music, I think it's super important, and it's kind of something I rely on a lot.
Yeah, because the way I feel about it is like a song like Acheron. It's almost like some kind of like, I don't know if it's like a yoga exercise, but you sit down and you count your breaths, and after breath, like the breath number 100 is gonna feel very, very different from the first breath, and that's kind of the same. Like as when I put on Acheron, like it doesn't really depend. It doesn't really matter where my mood is. Like by the time that you hear that phrase repeated the last time, you've developed a different relationship with it, and it's sitting in a different space, because through those minutes it goes through all these contexts and so on, and it just sort of like it's very stimulating one way or another.
Yeah, I think that I think I share your sentiment there. Yeah, it's sort of same idea with like running, right? If you go jogging, that first few minutes will feel awful and intense.
Yeah.
But then you hit your stride, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, it's not so bad. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. 1 second, I'm just gonna close my window.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, and like speaking a little more about repetition, like one of the things I like to set up is the tension of I like to have things maybe in spots go too long, where like I want someone to feel like I need this to change. I need this to change, and like start to go crazy, and then go a little longer and then change,
And then it hits.
Yeah. I really enjoy like playing with that tension. I mean, I think Firmament's obviously a pretty big example of that. Like it goes on for a bit, and you're like, I need something, and then you give something,
and then it comes. So yeah. So the running thing was actually a good segue into another thing, but I think I want to ask a little bit about more the songwriting, the lyrical part. It seems for me like if I had to sort of like say come with an overarching theme from what I hear, is like your music is sort of existential in the topics it deals with. Like in Acheron, it's about, one type of infinity, and Dead Star is another type of infinity. There's decay. You're wasting away either as a Dead Star or in Acheron, as a soul in Acheron. Like where do you feel like that there is a subject matter that you tend to return to again and again?
I think so. Yeah, I think like I don't know. I guess I'm the kind of person that's like always like weighing existential crises. um, so really, I would say, yeah, all of our records pretty much deal with that in some form or another. Um, but yeah, I think so.
Cool. Yeah, maybe that became a very loaded question. But you're an avid reader, right? I heard you
Not
take books
avid.
and no, not avid. Yeah.
I, I wish I was. It's something I've been, something I've been trying to be better at. I do. I like investigating things. I'm like, and not, I guess, investigating, but when I get interested in something, I'm going to deep dive, and I'm going to either read a lot about it or, you know, burying myself into the internet and like reading different things and studying lore. But yeah, I guess that's the long answer to. I don't read as much as I wish I did, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, I think we all have that side, you know. I bring a book every time I go for a travel, and I maybe open it 1 in 3 other times, but
hard. And I recently, so I used to bring like a hard copy, not a hard copy, but like a physical book on tour, and then the times that I would have to read would be at night in the van, and then it was kind of hard because people are trying to sleep, and I'm like, I have this light, like you start to feel like you don't want to like interrupt people sleeping on tour. It's very it's very faux pas, not acceptable.
Yeah,
because it's such a hard thing to come by. So I recently, before our last European tour, I got an e-reader, which was really good because then I can easily flip it up and I can read it by myself in my bunk, and I'm not disturbing anyone because the light's so I've been able to read more. That certainly helped. It's not the same as having a page to turn, but it has helped, at least for like traveling. Just even read for like 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time here and there.
Oh yeah, and I think that's a good segue into the touring part because like you guys, I mean, first of all, you just came back from Burning Man. How was that?
Oh, it was incredible. It was like one of the greatest experiences of my life. I already wish I was back there.
Wow. How long did you get to stay?
Oh my gosh. I think we did the math and it was 34 hours total.
Wow. Were you awake for most of those those hours? Did you try to?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you wanted to try to experience as much as you could while you're there. So yeah. Yeah. I think we arrived, we got to like our final destination, like in Burning Man, at 1:30 to 2 a.m. It was around 1:30 a.m. And then we performed the next night, and then we left at noon the next day.
Wow. How does it work? Do you fly to a nearby airport and just drive into it, or?
Yeah. We flew into Reno and then several hours of driving to get in.
Yeah. And I guess that drive in itself must be somewhat memorable. Like, or I don't know.
It is.
You should get into it.
We did it all at night, so we didn't get to see a whole lot. But yeah, I mean, everything about it, from like, I don't know, everything about it was just one of the most incredible things. From like when we landed and got picked up to when we left, it was incredible.
And you had a lot of good pyro.
Yeah, there's some killer pyro. Yeah, and it was really cool. My girlfriend got to push the fire button and shoot big fireballs into the sky. It was cool.
And that's a dream. I think everybody should have that experience once in their life.
Yeah.
Like, kids push the fireball button. I think the world would be a calmer place. Yeah. And Europe, how was that?
That was awesome as well. Certainly a different type of experience, but it was really cool. It had been, we were last there in 2019. We had plans to go back in 2020, which obviously wasn't able to happen. So it had been a long time since we were back there, and it was incredible. It was a little interesting because we had to figure out how to write a set list. We had released 3 albums since the last time we were there, in Dead Star, Burden, and Acheron. So writing set lists was kind of funny, but the shows were fantastic. The crowds were amazing. It was a great experience.
Yeah, and you were away for a long time. It was almost like a couple of months, like a whole summer.
It was like I think total like 32 days. So
32 days.
Yeah. We had 29 shows in 32 days. So We only had 3 days off, and those 3 days off were like, you get to ride in a van all day to get to the next place. So it was very, very busy and very hectic. We worked very hard, but it was a great experience.
Lots of German festivals.
Yeah. We had a lot of shows in Germany on this tour. But they were great.
Was it van travel exclusively, or did you also have some fly dates? I think you ended up in Portugal at one point.
The last 3 or so were fly dates. So I think we played. The last one with a van was Palp Festival in Switzerland in the Alps. It was incredible. And then we flew to, where the heck was it? Yeah, we flew to Portugal for Sonic Blast, and that was incredible. Then we flew to Belgium and then to Denmark.
Wow. Yeah, and the Denmark one, that was in Horsens Jailbreak Festival. And it was so weird because I saw the lineup for that show, and it was just like, sort of like dead hard rock kind of thing. And I thought it was like, you really seemed like the odd man out for me there. How was that?
I think we were the odd man out. It was interesting. The festival itself, like the venue was really cool, like a very fascinating venue, and the staff was fantastic. I definitely think that there was a good amount of people there that were into us. I definitely think most of the people at the festival were there for like Hammerfall and like there was like definitely more of like a metal crowd, and that was fine. I actually like Hammerfall, but we are obviously a completely different thing. So it was unusual for sure, but that's part of the gig. You show up and play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like it's an old state prison as far as I remember, like with super high walls, and I guess it's definitely got its own vibe there. So
a very brief tour of like the actual like jail cell compound area, and like it was fascinating.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And when you're playing live, I mean, do you write all your songs and your albums with the sort of the layers that you do in mind?
Oh yeah. There's certain stuff here or there that like, okay, we know we won't be able to do that live,
Yeah.
Dead Star, there's a couple songs on that record that like was it Echo of a Waning Star was like, we can't pull this off live. There's the amount of layers and stuff like that. So but we really try, especially for Bird and Acheron and Regenerator, made a big effort, like we want everything to be something we can play live. And certainly there's stuff that would be difficult to do. Like, I don't know if we'll ever play Interlude live, but like we wanted it all to be something that we can do that way. And I use a looper pedal. So like when I'm thinking about like all these layers, excuse me, the guitar harmonies that end up on the records, I'm trying to create them with a looper first to make sure that I can do that, as opposed to writing these intricate dual lead guitar harmonies that I can never recreate without adding another guitar player. We try to think of everything with a live version in mind.
Yeah, and it's always a looper that you use. It's not like a long delay set to a certain thing.
No. I mean, I do use a long delay, but for like example, the end of Cerberus, that's all a looper. Like that all happened in the moment with the looping pedal.
Yeah, it goes well 99% of the time with like hitting it on the spot.
But that's part of the thrill of performing live.
Yeah, sick.
I think there was only one time that I can really remember that it got off because I hit the loop wrong. Sometimes we start to drift off the loop, but I think there was one time where like I really like I hit it like fully on the wrong beat. And like totally off. I think I can only remember like one or two times where it's completely been a train wreck, and then you just have to turn it off and
just go with it without the layer. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Damn cool. So I have a little bit of questions about recording, a little bit of question about gear. You're up for more? Awesome.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean, I nerd out on all of this. So it's kind of cool. Or actually, I mean, the last live thing I think is mostly about self-care on tour. Like that's a topic. Like how do you stay happy, and do you try to stay fit or whatever? Because it's a lot of pressure sometimes.
Yeah, it is hard. I don't do as much. I don't really try to stay as fit on tour because it can be. I tend to think of everything. I think of every day as everything I'm doing has to serve and function for the show later that day. Yeah. So, sometimes I'll do a little like stretching and like push-ups and like little things like that, but I wouldn't go on like a run on tour unless I was like feeling really good, because I wouldn't want to be too tired later for the show or anything. So I always try to think of like conserving as much energy as I can. So for that time on stage, I'm able to do like put on the show that people want to see. I'm able to be like mentally present and playing and doing my part. It is hard, you know, like you end up in like mental ruts and things like that. But definitely one of the things that I think I've grown to learn more of is like knowing when you've like had enough, right? Like when it's like, okay, I need to like get away from people for a little bit, you know, like and as opposed to maybe when I was younger, you would have that same feeling, but think like, oh, maybe I just need to have another beer or two, you know, like, and then I'll loosen up. Or but instead it's just like, no, like just take a break. You know, you're out here for a month. You've been doing this every night. Like just go in the van in some darkness and quiet and like, you know, listen to a podcast or whatever, just sit by yourself for a while. Like, you know, finding little moments for privacy and like reflection, because you're really like, you're never alone. Like on tour, the privacy is like sleep is a very valuable commodity that's hard to find. Because even when you're driving, you're in the van with your bandmates and your crew and your sound guy and your merch guy. Like there's never a lot of time to just like sit by yourself and like think about things and relax. You gotta learn to find it when you can and claim it for yourself when you need it, and not always just try to push through. Sometimes you just have to deal. Obviously, if it's showtime, there's no like, I need another half an hour, guys. Sorry, no, it's go time. But finding those moments through the day beforehand are crucial.
Yeah, and I mean, you're as a trio, you've been the same guy since you started out. And it's like, how long ago was that? What, is it 10 years or
almost 10? We're I think at 9 years.
Wow,
2013.
Do you think there's something about, say, your experiences or your personalities that sort of like complements each other to sort of like make it work while you're, say, touring or writing together?
I think so. We're all very different people, and have very different interests and very different tastes. So sometimes that's really good. Of course, we argue, and like any group of creatives working together. Yeah. And there's little, of course, things that when you're in a van with someone for a month, they start to drive you crazy. But honestly, one of the things that we really we kind of take with a sense of pride is we're actually like extremely boring, like on tour, and I say that in a good way. Occasionally you meet other bands on tour and like, they're not boring. And you're like, there's no way. Like these guys are going to kill each other in a month, and like part of it is like, yeah, like we don't really, we have fun, we socialize, we like drink here and there, like whatever, but like, we're not like party animals. We're not going to like, got to get into some crazy shit, We're very much like, we're boring guys, and I think that's actually like kind of been a little bit of our secret to our success.
Really? I mean, you guys definitely have a work ethic, and I suppose that if you were running around trying to chase the next story of, or just chase the next dragon with like some kind of cool tour story all the time, I guess that can kind of hit the work ethic one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to burn out, like
Yeah.
it's hard to do, and like,
Yeah.
I think it's important, like, you don't want to think of it too much like a job, right? You don't want to be like, oh, this is just work. But at the same time, people are paying good money and taking their free time out of their day to come see you. So it is 100% your job to give them the best version of yourself. In my opinion, I think, like, just like ethically, I would feel bad if it's like, oh, the tour is going rough because I'm hungover.
Yeah.
Like, and sorry, folks, you're going to deal with me hungover for the show. I know you spent your money to come here, and your Tuesday night, you're going to be tired at work tomorrow, and you're making this decision to come here and see me. But I'm hungover, so you're going to get like 60% or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think that's right. So you maybe make some sacrifices as far as like the things you'd get into on tour. But I think, like, ultimately, like, you're doing it long enough, you can find those moments and have enough that you can accrue enough of them. Like, we've been doing this for 9 years,
Yeah.
I don't feel a shortage of, like, I don't feel like I've missed out on anything. And I feel like we're able to hit our stride and do this because of those, decisions of, like, we're going to be kind of boring.
Yeah. Okay.
When we can, not all the time, like, we're still like human beings.
Sure.
But, yeah, like,
But it's more like ropes and slippers than hookers and cocaine after a show.
ropes and slivers.
Like, you put on a robe and put on your slippers and get all rope. No, not ropes. No.
No, we're not tying each other up in the van.
No.
No. Yeah, like, again, like, make it. I feel like it's like our responsibility to be the best version of ourselves when we're out there. And also, like, again, if we're like fighting, too many drugs and alcohol get into the equation, it can be really hard to live with people in a van, like, that's when you realize, like, when it's in a lot of ways, it's almost more intense than like your relationship with your girlfriend, because you can, like, a whole house or an apartment, you have a lot more space than in that van.
Oh yeah,
you're doing it all the time.
Yeah, you'd have to learn not to carry resentment and handle the things right there and then, and love each other and move on. Or
and just knowing that, like, hey, like, what I'm gonna do is going to affect these other guys.
Yeah.
So, like, having a sense of, maybe I don't need to finish this whole bottle of whiskey and, like, throw up in the van tonight. That's a bad idea.
But that's the best thing. No, just kidding. That's super awesome. Yeah, cool. And it's kind of cool. It's good to hear, like, you have a relationship that you guys carry on your relationships back home one way or another. Like, Scott just got married, right?
Married, yeah. So congratulations to Scott and Alyssa.
Congratulations to Scott, if he ever gets around to hearing this.
Our bass player's been married for many years now, I think. I don't know how. I want to say since before King Buffalo, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe it was after King Buffalo. I can't remember. It was a while. He's been married for a while, and, like, me and my girlfriend have been together for several years. Everyone always asks all the time, like, oh, is your girlfriend go on tour? And it's like, no, she has a job and career, and, like, she has interests of herself. And of course I miss her when we're gone, but, touring, again, it's kind of like monotonous, like, the shows are what make it, like, that the performance itself is what makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
The riding in a van for 7 hours a day is like, it sucks.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, I'm a consultant, and I just started ramping up my travel plans, and, like, I mean, after a few weeks, it does get a little bit old, and I'm just on a week by week basis. So I imagine going somewhere new every day, like, my empathy is only rising. Yeah,
I mean, like, and you don't always get the time. Often you don't really have, like, tourism time. You don't really get to go see and do the cool things. So it's the kind of thing that, unless you're, like, doing it, it's hard to, like, drag someone along, because it's not glamorous. Like, We don't have like a tour bus. We have a van that we drive ourselves, and it's small, and things like that. So yeah, like.
So no driver for this Euro tour.
We did
just you guys. You did have a guy driver for this one. Yeah.
Is that? I mean, that's a whole nother thing, So yeah.
I know you used to drive a lot, right? But
yeah, I still do for like U.S. stuff. Domestic.
Are you gonna do it this time around?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, cool. That's I couldn't drive for 7 hours and do anything constructive after that. So
no, I used to before King Buffalo started to do well, and I actually for like the first 5 years of King Buffalo, I was still working this job. I was like an appliance like delivery man installer guy, and so I would literally just drive around all day and show up to some hey, you're getting a refrigerator, and like I would back up the truck and do the refrigerator stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable driving, and honestly, sometimes like riding in the back kind of stresses me out, like they're going too fast, things like that. So sometimes I don't mind driving. It does get tiring, and like some point down the road, probably when we can afford a bigger vehicle and a driver, I would love to be able to not do that, like a full-time dedicated driver, but that's expensive, and we're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can also sort of like get a little bit better density of shows, so that maybe you have some 3 or 4 hour drives rather than some 7 or 9 hour drives here and there.
And it depends on the tour. Honestly, our booking agents are fantastic, and they know what they're doing. And they know what is too much and what isn't. Like, we have a very good relationship with them. And so we really haven't had too many issues like that. The tours that are the most difficult are the ones where you're an opening band, like you're a direct support band for a larger band that has a tour bus.
Oh yeah.
Because they have the tour bus, they have the professional driver. The drives are longer. And so you have to like keep up with them. Those are the hard ones, but when it's like our own tours, the way we tour now, they're pretty manageable. Because you don't want them too close together, because then you're dealing with smaller shows, right? You want people to be able to, there's like business reasons to not have them be too close together.
Oh yeah.
That's why, you see these like mega, big bands. They don't, their drives are long because you want, you're playing a big arena. You need it full,
Oh yeah, for sure.
In every city, I'm sorry, like they're not going to be full.
No. That makes a lot of sense. How are you sort of like, I mean, I guess between Europe 2019 and now, how are you feeling about it? Are you guys feeling like there's some kind of traction? Do more people know your name?
I think so. Yeah. Honestly, like, the amount of support we received, like even during the pandemic, like starting really right around Dead Star up until now, has been absolutely like mind blowing. And so, yeah, this last tour in Europe was amazing. I don't know. It was extremely humbling. It was very cool. I think like, it kind of feels like our best days are ahead of us, which is pretty cool when you've been a band for 9 years.
Wow, I'm super glad to hear that. But then again, I mean, with that kind of work ethic and releasing like consistently good material in such a sort of like short time frame, that's also like super impressive. So I think it kind of like, it comes with the good work that you guys are doing.
Thank you. I will say it's kind of funny. It was, I'm a big fan of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Yeah.
And like, oh yeah, like we're going to do 3 albums in a year. I know they did 5 one year, but and I just laughed. I just saw the announcement. They're releasing 3 records on the same day. And I was just like, God, how do you guys do it?
Yeah, it's insane. That's absolutely insane.
3 records on the same day. Like, it's just so funny. It's like just when you know, I guess that goes back to like sort of existential dread. You're like, if you try to compare yourself too much to other people, you're just going to drive yourself crazy.
Is there any sort of like feeling for what 2023 is going to bring? Do you think that's going to be your big touring year, or might we see you back in the studio, or do you have any feeling yet?
I do think it's going to be a substantial amount of touring. And we might do a little bit back in the studio. We kind of have like a different operation than a lot of other bands, where since our studio is our rehearsal space, it's not usually like we're back in the studio. It's just kind of like, like
let's hit record.
Yeah. Like we just hit record and then see what happens. And then, as far as like official production time goes, that would be once we feel like we have all the material, and then we'll deal with the actual production. But the writing process, we don't like go into a studio to do that. It's just
of course not. Yeah, I get that, but
it's just like the first half an hour of practice we jam, or the last half an hour of practice we jam. We see what happens.
Okay, wow. So that's really organic and kind of cool. But I guess that also kind of comes from knowing each other so well, and I guess being a trio, you're a little bit more nimble with where you can go, rather than if you were like a 4-piece group or a 5-piece group. It must help too. Yeah,
I mean, we don't have room in the van for another person. But no, we have a good, we've all been playing together for a long time. And even before King Buffalo, I was in a band with Dan for a couple years. So me and Dan have been playing together for a long time. So you learn a lot about how people play like throughout the course of that. And I don't know. I don't know if the next, who knows what will be down the road for the next recording project. I kind of want to do something really, really out of our comfort zone, and I don't know what that's going to be yet, but I've been like brainstorming to like see if we can pull something off that will really like push us in ways that we haven't before. I don't know.
You're going to go fishing in some very new waters.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm going to be excited.
Whether it like, we'll probably experiment with it. And if it doesn't go well, we obviously won't be able to.
No,
we're not going to release like, a pop record or something crazy, but
sure.
And maybe nothing will ever happen with this and everyone will be disappointed, but it's fun to push yourself and do weird things sometimes.
Yeah. How was it like recording Acheron, like down in that cave?
Ooh, I'm really happy we did it. I would never want to do it again.
Oh my.
It was a very difficult process. We did it all in one day. We loaded in at like, I think 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't get packed up to leave. We didn't start packing up until 9 o'clock at night. Getting everything set up was just a logistical nightmare. But it was really rewarding, and I'm really glad we did it. But at the time, like looking back, it was very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make decisions because, I mean, as a recording engineer, as you are, like you must be like a kid in a candy store with regards to like interesting microphone placements and what if we put a mic here and there. And
so we did have an engineer for Acheron, because there was no way I would have been able to engineer that myself and perform. And he is the same guy who mixed Dead Star, and he's been our front of house engineer for years. So he knew we had a really great working relationship with him, and he does a lot of studio work as well. So he has his own rig, and he was able to come and he did that. And you kind of actually, you don't in a something like that, you don't really get to do as much experimenting as you would think, or as you would want, because it's basically like you got to throw and go, like set up the microphone where you are confident it will sound good, and that's it. There's like, you're not going to be able to do a lot of like listening back and like, oh, actually, what if we move that a little bit this way, a little bit that way? You get like very little bit amount of time to do that. So it's like, this is where I know I've put up a guitar mic or a mic in front of a guitar speaker many times. That's going to be fine. I can EQ and fix it if I don't like it later, but I'm not going to like search for the holy grail of tone. It's just you gotta capture it. You got to do it quick. And, you know, there's a lot of that.
Was there bleed in the mics from the guitar amps and so on? Like the drum mics, did they have amp bleed, or did you do it in a different way?
Yeah, sure. But we did set we were able to put the guitar amp pretty far away.
Yeah.
So it's there. You know, of course, it's a live recording, and it's in a cave. It's just bouncing everywhere. But one thing that did kind of help is that since it is a cave and a naturally occurring structure, there was not a parallel surface anywhere. And I don't know how much you know about engineering and acoustics.
Oh, dude, I was in a cave in Slovakia. There was this castle we were in, and we went down underneath the castle. It had this like natural cave that they had dug a well in. And it was the craziest experience because there were these stalagmites, and the stalagmites, they were sort of had this like fractal pattern. So they were like almost optimal diffusers, and it was like being in a super dead room. It was the weirdest experience.
Yeah, it's really wild. It's definitely like, I don't know. Once you're in there, it's hard to believe that it sounds a certain way, you know. And it's not matter depending on where you're standing and where you put stuff. It's changing all the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely have. I mean, I haven't done that much recording, but like I have a really good sense of acoustics, and it's kind of like, yeah. I remember when I was clapping in that cave, they had like a really long square-shaped corridor, and that was what was giving the reverb. The rest of it was just this sort of like weird, almost like sort of like both intimate, but also like slightly different, dizzy sounding kind of thing. And obviously it depends on in what particular cave you are in, what particular shape it has, what it's made out of. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, the thought of doing it excites me, and as must have excited you.
And it was like I said, it was an experience unlike any other. As someone who like gets really like hyper focused on things, and it was very difficult. You know, it was also just like so part of the reason we did it in the cave is because it was still winter, pretty much, like very cold where we live. And we wanted to do something in like a natural setting. And the cave was deep enough underground where it was a common, like year round, it's like 52 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay. Yeah.
It's deep enough underground. That's what it is. But we didn't take into account the humidity. Because there is a stream that runs through it, which you hear on the record.
Yeah.
There's a stream. So as soon as we get down there, it's like hit with the level of, you're sweating more than you've ever thought you could sweat in your life.
No way.
You're cold at the same time, and you're like, whoa, you know, like within minutes, gear is like dripping with water, you know, because it's so humid. And then there's like, how am I going to keep my guitars in tune? Like, you know, like it's again, logistically a bit of a nightmare, but
is your Fender Twin going to corrode?
Yeah,
or whatever.
You know, it was crazy.
Gosh, sounds so fun. Yeah, I had a band that that rehearsed in bungers. We have a lot of old bungers from like the Cold War in Copenhagen, and a lot of them have get turned into rehearsal studios. But they have a lot of issues because it's basically like it's just like half a sphere that's been cut in half. So unlike a cave that has like no opposing surfaces, or well, it doesn't really have opposing surfaces, but it has all these like anodes and just like points where sound converge and like reverberates in a really weird way for a very small room. So that's like sort of the opposite experience in that, you know, it's kind of really hard to record inside of that. But it's it's really fun. Speaking of recording, I feel like on Burden of Restlessness, like that album has a slightly different sound from everything else that you've done. It has very sort of like the drums are very upfront and in your face. Like when Habitation starts, like there's this like it's like it's quite processed, but I mean it just sounds so killer. Is there anything that you did differently when recording that, or was it more like an after effect thing, or what kind of caused that album to sound like that?
I mean, I wanted it to sound very like aggressive and close. I wanted everything in the record to be like here, like inside your brain. I wanted to be all the way in, like
That's where it is.
Maybe farther up front. So there was a couple gear things. I was able to get my hands on a couple really awesome preamps that I used on kick and snare for the drums when we
you can name them. This is a bit of a gear channel too. So.
Okay, they were called the Trinity Strip by Lightning Boy Audio, and I used those on the kick and snare, and they were fantastic.
That's the guys in Rochester that made one of your overdrive pedals once, right?
They're out of like Lockport, or they're near Buffalo. So
oh yeah.
Way, but yeah, I used an overdrive of his for many years. He also makes really good rack gear and studio gear now. He doesn't do pedals anymore. But yeah, those were integral on that record. I used a lot of I brought the baffles really in close to the drums so that there wasn't a ton of room. Excuse me. And then a lot of it was just in processing and post. I don't track with any compression or EQ. I'm like very much like a digital guy. Like I get like a good solid clean sound and then I do everything in post. I don't know, I got my hands on the SSL native plugins, and they're great. They're awesome. So if you're into plugins, the SSL native channel strip and bus compressor, the channel strip on drums was just like the better button. Like literally you just turn it on and don't do anything, and it instantly made them better. And then you of course can start doing stuff with it and using the actual processing, and it was awesome.
That's super nice. Are you minimal when it comes to processing, or don't you mind throwing like 10 plugins on if it sounds good? Do you have like a philosophy or a certain approach?
I do whatever works.
Yeah.
I try not to go too much, depending on what it is. Like, it really depends on the source and depends on what it is I'm trying to accomplish. I'm mixing on a MacBook Pro from 2015, so I can't run too much of an insane amount of plugins. But there are certainly some channels that have 7 plugins on them, depending on what they are. One of the things I did a lot of on Burden is using more bus processing and routing things to buses and doing stuff that way. But yeah.
Yeah, but that's just like the process way that comes out. I also like I'm a software engineer by trade, and my work machines are like super duper new machines. But my main computer, my audio computer, is like a Intel desktop computer from 2013, and that has actually also put me in that situation where, hey, I can't put on a million plugins, and I sort of have to learn what they do and learn how to get like a sound out of them before buying 100 new ones or whatever. I actually think that you speak of constraints or trying new constraints in songwriting, and I actually think that it's a pretty healthy habit for audio engineering, even if you end up having to print something once in a while.
Yeah, and if you're engineering your own stuff, you're afforded luxuries that you aren't if you're engineering other people's material, which I have done. I've worked as an engineer for a while, where sometimes, if you're really struggling to make something sound right, sometimes it's just because it's the wrong part, and there's nothing you can do. So if you're working on your own material, you can say, oh, well, let's change the arrangement. Let's, do something like that. Or if you're the producer, you can do those things. But if you're just the engineer for someone else's work and they're having you mix it, there's no actually, what if you change the key of the song? You don't get to do that.
No.
So you're afforded some luxuries when you're working on your own stuff that really can help in the engineering process. But yeah, again, it's sometimes, and one of the simple rules that I like to abide by is I don't like to undo. Like if I catch myself, EQing something, like doing a bump at 700 hertz with an EQ, and then later in that plugin chain, I'm all of a sudden cutting 700 hertz. I'm like, okay, like maybe I don't need to be doing this. I start taking stuff off. Like if you start to find yourself countering things that you've already done higher in the chain, then it's time to go. Time to stop. Maybe take them all off and start over.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you still get the odd recording gig here and there, or is that has that gone to the wayside with King
Yeah,
Buffalo picking up?
it's gone to the wayside.
Yeah.
Just been like super busy, and obviously with COVID, I didn't really want to take on. Um, I mean, doing 3 records in the year, like I had no free time. You know, like I was incredibly busy on our own thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not something I was actively seeking out or like trying to get, and maybe I will in the future, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
but I mean, as a band hopefully grows a lot. I mean, you also, I mean, of course, the DIY approach is part of what makes a band the band. But I mean, it's also, as you get more demand, success, more money, whatever, like it also sort of like sets the stage up for places where you might want to defer more things, right? Like,
Sure.
you had more, you mixed most of your early records, I think, right? But of the 3 albums you mixed, or you just released, it was just like, I think one of them was mixed by someone else, or 2.
Just one. I did everything for Burden and Regenerator.
Yeah.
The engineer that we brought out for Acheron, he recorded it and mixed it.
Yeah. Okay, so that was completely out of your hands. Was that a good feeling?
Yes and no. I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of a bit anal, and I like
Yeah.
fixate on things. So there's the thing I like about doing it myself is I know no one will put the same attention to detail on it that I will, because you can't expect someone else to do that. They listen to it differently, and that's fine. And he did a great job, and I have no issues with his work. But I don't know. For me, like I like getting in there. I like crafting it, and I like probably spending way too much time on it than anyone ever really should.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not charging. Like I'm not on the clock.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I'm never one to like say like we're never gonna hire an outside producer and go record a studio in like a nice studio with a different engineer. Maybe we will someday.
Yeah.
And who knows? But I'm really liking the way things have been going for now.
Yeah, it seems to work out.
Yeah.
Did you so the vocals on Burden are like really processed too, and it's kind of like such a cool sound. Can you lift the veil on what any of that was?
Oh man, it's been so long that I don't know what's on the vocal bus, but I do know I used I could guess the microphone I used was a Warm the WA-87.
Yeah.
Their UA their U-87 clone. And
The first or the second one, because there are 2 of them.
The first one, with not the rounded top.
Yeah. I have a 47 Junior. It's like
okay,
it's
cool.
pretty decent.
Yeah, so I used that for Burden because I wanted it to be very like really, really close,
Yeah.
have that high end sparkle and like really have it sound like it was in someone's ear.
Yeah.
I loved the way it sounded on my voice. Processing wise, I don't think I usually don't go too crazy as far as like EQ and compression. I love the sound of an LA2A style compressor on vocals and bass. A little bit of EQ.
Do you sit around and sort of like edit and comp a lot, or do you try to get lots of comping?
Particularly on that record as well, a lot of comping.
Yeah.
I'm definitely one to overtrack my vocals, my vocal takes, and same with guitar takes. But
yeah. Where did you have to commit? Just going back to Acheron, did you have to commit to the takes that you recorded that day, or were you sort of a little bit like, I'll go in overdub a little bit here and there?
I think we did some vocal overdubs.
Yeah.
But not like layering things. It had to just be like
no.
The whole thing. But that was it. There was no guitar, bass, drum overdubs in any way. We did 3 takes of each song, and of course we comped some things when we needed to.
Sure.
Did 3 takes and that was it.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. And that sort of leads me to my next question, which is like, do you commit the delay when you record or on the guitar, or do you tend to use DAW delay?
It depends. Acheron was all committed. That was all right there. That was, if there was too much, then that's just the way it goes. So there's not enough.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's a special record. Like really, like so it's super cool.
So yeah, it really depends. I think Burden. I'm trying to think. Some of it was committed at tracking, but I think a lot of it wasn't. And then Regenerator. Again, it was kind of depends on the song and the part, like 50-50, whether I do use the same delay machine. So I use a Strymon timeline. And then I also use it in my studio, like for,
so you have it as a plugin or as an inset, a hardware plugin.
Yep,
yeah.
If I want, so that way I know I can kind of get close to that delay sound, live again.
That makes so much sense. Has it always just been behaving well for you, the Strymon? You never had any issues, or it's just like,
It's been rock solid. At one, like I had to change one of the foot switches once, but I've been using it full time touring for many years now.
Wow, that's wild. And you're not looking to go to any other delay. I mean, at this point, it's so integral to your sound that it's kind of like hard to. You would have to have another delay next to that one just to do all the old songs and have all the old presets at this point.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think I would switch to another delay. I don't know. I'm even afraid to say this. I feel like I might get like the purists might come after me, but I have a buddy who just got a quad Cortex, and he's just raving at me at how great it is. And there's a part of me that's like, do I want a quad Cortex? And go DI. But I don't know, that like it would have to be able to do all of the delays that my timeline can do. And I don't know if it can do that. So.
Yeah, I get that. Like, it's weird, like me speaking of modeling, because as you can see, I'm an amateur. I barely release anything, but you see over here there's a bunch of amps, and that comes after having done a long stint of just using modeling. And to me personally, it's not the same thing. But at the same time, I saw, what was it? I saw like Megadeth live a few months ago, and they were sounding fantastic. They sounded so absolutely good. And I know that's quad Cortex. So I feel like live, like modeling just kind of works, and it really does something with the DIs that you have and the impulse responses that you can get, and all those things just makes it so much more controllable and repeatable. Because I don't know, did you do backline gear in when you were doing Europe, or did you bring your twin?
We rented backline. But then there are certain festivals you show up and you can't use, you're using whatever they have. Yeah. And luckily Fender stuff is like pretty ubiquitous. So most festivals will have some Fender amp there for you to use, depending on the festival. But yeah, that's the thing that's the appeal of like a quad Cortex or, a Helix or, whatever, Kemper is like, it's the same every night. And that's awesome of a feeling. And because it's tough, especially like we're on in-ears now. So like if that microphone on my guitar amp is an inch this way or an inch that way, or like whatever, or the room is just weird, like it changes drastically, and it is piped right directly into your ears. And so off-putting. So there's definitely, I don't know, I've been brainstorming if there's a way to do like a hybrid digital analog rig where like you would still have an amp and you'd still have it mic'd, and you would have that signal, but then you would also have a direct amp sim signal that you could blend with it to get that consistency. And maybe you just use the amp sim in your ears and then the mic out front or whatever. But I don't know. I'm always like searching for the next goofy way to do this.
Yeah, what I think you could consider, just sort of like, I'm not a pro engineer, but what I think you could consider is so I have something here like the Sur reactive load sitting down there, right? So the Sur reactive load it does two things. It provides a load for the amp, like simulates a speaker so the amps don't die out, but then it also just has a little bit of like a signal tap, like that's like way lower than the speaker load that goes out. And they actually have a similar thing that gives you like a little tap on that line out from the amp. And that could be run into an impulse response, because in that case, and then that could be run into your in-ear. Because if you did that, then you would have a sound of a tube amp. It wouldn't be a modeling amp. It would be the same amp that your audience is hearing, but the impulse response would always be the same. So you would sort of save yourself that issue. But I don't know if you can do it with one bucks, but you can definitely do it with two. So it's a bit of a trade-off about whether you want to lube it in.
I know Hughes and Kettner has one called the Red Box that sounds like it does the same thing, where it creates a load and then it'll run out to your speaker, but then you'd have a direct out as well that you could use.
Yeah, that's not a DI, it's a DI, but it's not an impulse response based, so you can't change it that much, but it could also work. The good thing is it's analog, so there's zero delay.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, I mean, we'll see how that develops along time.
I'm always, I don't know. I just bought a new guitar amp, which I'm kind of excited about.
What you got?
I bought it's the Hot Rod DeVille, the Michael Landau version. I don't know. So it has the upgraded speakers and the different preamp circuits. But I found one. I was kind of intrigued because like my twin can sometimes be a little too loud and oftentimes be too loud.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna find a more of a happy medium, something that still has clean headroom, but does what it has, a little more versatile.
Yeah.
And I was just killing some time, and I was buying some strings at a local big chain music store because they were the only place that had my gauges in stock. And I always like to walk through the used section of every music store I go to, and I found one there used, and they were charging like absurdly low. Like when they took the amp into their system, they put it in as a regular Hot Rod DeVille instead of the signature version. And so I told the guy, I'm like, hey dude, like, just so you know, like that's way too low. Like you're not charging enough. And the kid working was like, yeah, I don't know. Like sometimes we have good deals. And I was like, and then I was like, okay, then I'll buy it. And then, like, okay. And so like they were charging $500.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And I get to pick it up Monday because since it was used in New York, a certain amount of time has to clear before you can actually take it home in case it was stolen.
Yeah.
So I get to pick it up Monday, and who knows, maybe that will be my new amp.
Ooh,
I told them,
really
I warned them that they were not charging enough money. There's no ethical concerns here. I said, hey, you're not charging enough for this. This is wrong. And the kid said, I don't know. It's fine. Yeah. You want it? And I said, okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's always like, what is your own ethos allow yourself to do with trading? I mean, definitely been in some situations like that before. I think I was also like, I've tried buying a guitar a little bit too cheap, like a Squire JV, it's priced like a Squire. But the guy, he was like, well, we've done the trade. You get to do it. But yeah, it's kind of funny how that works. Also, gear hunting is a whole thing in itself. Like when I was in Slovakia last week, I was in a sort of small village, and I looked up guitar store on my Google Maps, and we found this little hole in the wall place where there was an old guy, and you just go in, you could just smell it, that he has like all the good gear. And he was just being like, he wouldn't sell half of it. He was like, I'm closing my shop and I'm going to sell this guitar here. There's a guy who's been calling me for months. He wants it. And and this amp is like some Rook or whatever. And it's like legendary amp, but how much? Oh, I'm not ready to sell it yet. It's kind of funny when those little places that you go through. So, but would you say you're a gearhead? Because I mean, you play the same two guitars all the time.
A little bit, but not really. I try not to get too wrapped up in gear. It's not going to be the thing that makes or breaks you. Like the term I use is cork sniffing, right? Oh yeah, the mids on this, it's a little bit like, at the end of the day, no one cares but you, like when you go and, like you said, you saw Megadeth, they sounded incredible. No one cares that they're using amp sims.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Does it sound good? Does it sound good out front? That's all that matters. And so I try not to get too hung up. Of course, I'm a neurotic mess, and I'm like, oh, this fuzz isn't doing what I need it to do, or like blah, blah, not enough clean headroom, too much clean headroom, and so I'm always like chasing. But I like to limit what I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, once you pick your pedal board for the tour, that's it. You're not going to go out and once you pick your pedal board for the tour, you're not going to go out and buy pedals halfway through.
Nope. It's like I brought a couple spares on the Europe tour, like in case I was like, oh, if this overdrive doesn't work, I have a different one that I know I like, I can switch out, and I never did it. And it's just like, you just make it work,
Yeah. Did your new signature pedal live up to the road?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, I love it.
I think I might have to get myself one of those. They're kind of cool. You're not selling them.
I'm biased, but I think it's
yeah. Like it's sort of a big muff, but not that much, right?
No, it is. It is based off of a big muff.
Yeah.
So it has definitely a bit of like a big muff sound to it, but it also has an added like octave circuit, which really like steps the thing into like hyperdrive. It's awesome. The octave sound on it is just incredible. That's like the Silverfish, Burning, the Knox, like all of that is done with that octave pedal, and then you can leave it on, and when you're like getting heavy, like End of Cerberus, all with the octave pedal.
Yeah,
it's like I don't know, like a lightsaber or something, just like wow.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Oh man, yeah, dude. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm looking. I wrote down all the questions I ever wanted to ask you, and I got to ask even more. So, I mean, dude, Sean, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, this has been a great interview, man.
Thank you.
Cool questions. I enjoyed talking about this stuff.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna try and catch you guys in Montreal in a month or so.
Yeah,
so yeah. So that's super good. Yeah, man. So it's all been good. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, man. This has been great.
Take care.